Hi guys, welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be discussing who will die in the Suicide Squad. Yesterday we got a look at James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Having seen some at DC Fandom last year, however this was the first trailer and it has given us an indication what the film's tone is going to be. I'm going to go over all the characters in the squad and sort of discuss their likelihood of if they'll get killed off or not. And then I just want to do a brief discussion on who I think Taika Waititi is playing in the movie. First off, we've got Flagg, played by Joel Kinnaman. You know, he's basically the leader of the Suicide Squad, and I kind of think that he's probably going to be a safe character. This film was sort of talked about as being a soft reboot, and James Gunn has even said it's not even really a sequel to the first film, but rather a sequel to the comic books. However, there are some characters that have come over from David Ayer's version of the film. I think it's unlikely that Flagg will get killed off, but we'll have to wait and see, but I think he's probably a safe bet to stay alive. Next up, we've got Savant, and he's played by Michael Rooker, who has collaborated frequently with James Gunn. And honestly, I think Savant's probably going to get killed, and I think he'll probably have a very gruesome death. As we can see from the trailer that this is going to have a hard R rating, and you know it's going to be gorier than most traditional comic book movies. And Michael Rooker has a tendency to get killed off in the films he stars in general, and then in particular with James Gunn. So I sort of feel like, yeah, he'll probably have quite a comical bloody death. Moving on, we've got Javelin. So I don't know too much about this character except that he's throws a javelin. And you know, I think it's interesting that James Gunn wasn't using like top tier characters of the Suicide Squad. You know, overall I think like there's some quite interesting characters that we wouldn't usually get to see in a comic book movie. So, in my opinion, I think Javelin is probably a high chance of getting killed off. I think his costume looks a bit bold and colourful, and I think it'd be quite amusing to see this character killed off. And people have pointed out that Harley Quinn is carrying around a javelin or a spear in some of the set photos and in the trailer, and it's most likely that she picked this up from Javelin, so he probably gets killed off. Moving on, Polka-Dot Man. So this is an interesting one because in the trailer we hear him say that he hopes he's going to die. And, you know, I feel like that's sort of like a red herring that he's going to survive the movie. And, you know, I think, you know, his powers seem quite interesting about controlling these dots that are on his body. And, you know, he seems quite prominent in the trailer for one of the characters who's not like the leading stars. So I kind of feel like he will have a fair shot at survival. But obviously, you know, James Gunn has said, like, he had free reign to kill any character he wanted. And, you know, he could even kill some of the bigger ones. But personally, I think Polka-Dot Man will survive. Moving on, we've got Ratcatcher 2, who's basically like a Pied Piper-like character, I believe. And, you know, there's a Ratcatcher 1 who's a man. And yeah, this version is likely to be maybe the first one's daughter, and I do think Ratcatcher 1 will appear, and I'll discuss that a bit at the end. I kind of think like she probably will survive, but you know, that's not really based on anything. I think she's seen a bit in the trailer, and I kind of feel like she's more likely to survive. And we've got Bloodsport, played by Idris Elba. And, you know, he was actually initially written to be taking over the role of Deadshot, who was played by Will Smith in the first film, but they went in a different direction, and he is the character Bloodsport. Now, Idris Elba's probably, fair to say, he's probably the biggest name in this movie, other than maybe Margot Robbie. And, you know, even though he's probably like the leader, and he's the leader alongside Flagg, it looks like from the trailer, I actually think there's a good chance that they'll kill him off, but I do believe that it'll maybe be a noble death. I've heard other YouTubers say that he might have a more noble, heroic death. But, you know, yeah, that's just my guess, but, you know, equally he could survive. Then we've got King Shark, who is performed by Steve Agee, and Sylvester Stallone is voicing the character. Now, as King Shark seems like this dumb, brute force character in this trailer, you know, I think he's probably a safe bet to survive, like he's not going to get killed. Mongul, I reckon is probably going to get killed off. You know, you don't see too much of her in the trailer. In fact, I don't know if you see her at all, if memory serves. And you only saw her briefly in the DC Fandom footage from last year. So I think there's a good chance she'll get killed off. You got Thinker, who's played by Peter Capaldi, and we see him in the trailer. We see he only sort of appears at this first part of the mission. So how I think this film is going to play out is going to be like this part in the city, and then sort of on this like island where this like Nazi base is supposedly. And I kind of think he might get killed off early on and won't be part of that second half of the movie. And we've got Blackguard, played by Pete Davidson, and I've heard that he's not in the film too much, and from what I've seen in the trailer, I think he could have quite a comical death early on. I think he could be one of the characters who gets his head blown off by Amanda Waller to sort of show off how she's controlling the Suicide Squad. That's my guess, but there's nothing in the trailer that suggests that's how he'll die, but I've heard he only has a small role in this, and he doesn't appear in any of the footage of them in the jungle sequences, I'll call it. TDK, played by Nathan Fillion. So this character, I believe he rips his arms off and beats people with them. Very unusual character. So, yeah, I reckon he's a goner. He's worked with James Gunn quite frequently, and, it's probably a cameo role, and I could see him showing off his powers a bit, but then getting killed off quite early on in the film. Then we've got Weasel, who is played by Sean Gunn, who is the director James Gunn's brother. And Sean Gunn also did the motion capture sort of stand-in for Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It's not clear if Sean Gunn is also voicing the character Weasel. We don't see too much of Weasel in the trailer either, so I think he could be another character who's going to get killed off. And I've already suggested that I think King Shark will survive, so having like two characters that are sort of like animals I don't think will happen, so I think out of King Shark and Weasel's probably the one who's going to get killed off. Then we've got Captain Boomerang, played by Jai Courtney, who is returning from the first Suicide Squad movie. And, I actually think he's going to get killed off. He's not seen too much in the trailer. I think having characters from the first film come into this one and not kill any of them off will be quite unusual, so I feel like this could also be another way to do a comedic death in the movie. And unfortunately, it just looks like Jai Courtney's Captain Boomerang will be the one who gets killed out of the characters returning from the first movie. We've got Peacemaker, played by John Cena. I think from what I've seen in the trailer, he features quite a lot. And, John Cena's sort of coming up as a comedic actor, very popular. And, James Gunn is also currently shooting a spin-off HBO series with Peacemaker. And he has stated that it's a prequel to this, so that's no guarantee that, he'll survive this because the TV show takes place prior to this. However, I do think John Cena will survive, and then I reckon we'll probably get more Peacemaker shows down the line, and then he'll probably return for the third Suicide Squad movie. And then finally we've got Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. I think she's probably a safe bet to not be killed off. However, even if she was killed off, I think they can bring her back in other ways in the future in both Suicide Squad and, if they do a solo Harley Quinn movie or another Birds of Prey movie. But, overall, I think she's probably a safe bet to not be killed off. So that's it for my predictions for the characters who are going to die in the Suicide Squad. And I just want to talk about briefly who Taika Waititi might be playing in the movie. Taika Waititi has been on the roster for the movie since it was announced, but it's no confirmation yet of to who he's playing. And a lot of people thought he was playing Starro, and yesterday James Gunn actually confirmed that he is not playing Starro, who appears to be this giant starfish villain. So I think there's probably a few other characters he could be playing, but I'm not too sure. So I think he could potentially be voicing Weasel, as Sean Gunn only did the motion capture stand-in for Rocket Raccoon, and then you had Bradley Cooper voice the character. And then, as I mentioned earlier with Ratcatcher, we have the character Ratcatcher 2, and I feel like why have the character Ratcatcher 2 if there wasn't a 1? And I think other people have suggested that Taika Waititi could have a small role playing Ratcatcher 1. I could see that happening, but I'm not sure. And finally, I just think he could potentially be playing the character Batmite. James Gunn spoke briefly about the character Batmite at DC Fandom, but he sort of hinted at that, you know, it wasn't going to work out. However, I do kind of feel like this could potentially be a surprise in the movie, and Taika Waititi will be voicing this character. Or he could be playing a unannounced Suicide Squad member. But you know, I'm not too familiar with the Suicide Squad roster, so you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on who you think he could be playing, if not for the ones I've suggested. So that's it for this video. Please give this video a like, don't forget to subscribe, and please click the bell icon to receive notifications for all of my videos. Thanks for tuning in.